Well, another month, another free-to-play indie games episode. Well, another 3 months I guess, a new year in fact. I plan to get quite a few of these done this year, mainly so I can thin out my ever-growing list of free-to-play indie games, but also because I enjoy doing these. You never quite know what to expect when playing some of these games, and doing these videos is a good way of showcasing work that either gets overlooked or not enough attention to begin with. At some point I'd like to start branching off to other platforms like itch.io, since there's significantly more variety on there, plus it would be nice to use something other than Steam for once. When this will happen though, I cannot say. If this is the first free-to-play indie games episode you've seen and are unfamiliar with how these work, I essentially pick 6 random free-to-play indie games from a massive list I have stored away. Play and talk about each one of them, explaining what they are and highlighting their strengths and weaknesses. I don't rank them or rate them, I just keep things short and simple. As usual, I try to keep the games I talk about varied so that I'm not just reviewing 6 first-person shooters or something like that. There's a big net here, and there's sure to be at least one thing here that piques your interest. If not, maybe take a look at my previous episodes and see if anything there tickles your fancy. Yes, that was very subtle of me. Watch my other videos, please. Anyway, we've got horror, platforming, some action and relaxation, and a couple that I would say are pretty unique from what I reviewed in the past. You can find the links to all of these in the description box below. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the video. Yeah, I know, it's another Backrooms game, but it was on the list so I had to go through it, and here it is. The Backroom Lost and Found is a first-person horror game taking place in, you guessed it, the Backrooms. If you don't know what they are, Google it. The short of it, it's basically what you're seeing right now. Whereas the one I played last time was downright horrifying in an incredibly subtle yet effective way, this one is unusual, to say the least. Again, you have no idea why you are here, but you know what you must do. Save a family of toy giraffes. Oh, and escape too, but that comes later. Yeah, so this one goes for an amusing approach to the Backrooms, which, to be honest, is quite a refreshing change. Throughout the twisting corridors and rooms, you come across little toy giraffes that talk. You bring them to a safe room, which also acts as a lift of sorts, then once reunited, you find a way out of there. That being said, just because it's funny at times doesn't mean it's not scary. It is still a horror game after all. That horror is brought to light by the mannequins. They're basically like weeping angels from Doctor Who. They're harmless most of the time, despite changing their stances when you look away, but later on they become aggressive and will transform and attack you when you approach them. One other thing that makes the game unnerving is how surreal it all feels. Even though it is very recognisably the Backrooms, it also feels completely different thanks to its presentation. For example, some walls aren't quite solid and can be accessed by entering gateways that lead into an alternate world, one where the mannequins turn into monsters. Again, remember what I said about this game being unusual? And yet, despite how silly it all sounds, it is surprisingly quite good. There's more to it than meets the eye, especially from a gameplay point of view. It is by no means a walking simulator. There are some stealth sections and even a parkour segment towards the end. Exploration is also something that is integral to the game. You can find all sorts of seemingly innocuous items, such as strange paintings and almond waters. Okay. I didn't do enough exploring in my playthrough. Without going into spoiler territory, I very much paid for that dearly. Look, it's bizarre, but it genuinely is a fun game. A bit on the easy side if I'm being completely honest, but there's still plenty of entertainment to be had, and with the plethora of copy and paste Backrooms games there are, it's nice to have something that does things differently. Shiner is a 2D side-scrolling, turn-based fighting game taking place in a bizarre, hand-drawn world containing a diverse cast of characters, ranging from a little dragon bird thing to a big sentient block of ice. As you can see, it's completely cool and normal. You play as Fang, a newly hatched, not really sure what it is, a creature. one who starts off as a rather incompetent fighter to say the least. You might be wondering why that's the first thing I mention about them. Well, it's because this is a fighting game. It's all about challenging people to fight one-on-one. The neat twist that Shiner has, however, is that every time you successfully beat an enemy, you gain their movesets. So to start with, you don't know anything, so you can't do anything except get beaten to a pulp. Then you learn how to punch, and can fight back. Later on though, you won't just be punching. You'll be applying curses, doing stronger punches, as well as different unique attack moves, applying defensive bonuses to yourself, and doing other utility moves, such as healing. You can only have 4 moves at a time though, so there's quite a bit of strategy involved. It's not just about using the right moves for each opponent either. You have to think about how and when you use them. You can't just run in and punch, you have to be smart about it, because your opponent will always attack first, and you have no idea what they will do. Saying that this is a serious strategical game, however, would be a wildly inaccurate statement. It's not meant to be taken seriously at all. It's light-hearted and fun all around. The characters have their own quirks, letting them all stand apart from each other. They're also all fully voice acted, and it's not that bad. That being said, don't let its colourful charm fool you. It can be quite a challenging game, as you basically have to learn through trial and error. Each opponent you face is presented to you in order, but that doesn't mean you have to follow that order. You can approach them in any way you want, and you'll have to be non-linear about it anyway. Some opponents have moves that need to be used against others, so finding the right ones and fighting them in the right order is a challenge in and of itself. So while the atmosphere and style of the game is easygoing, its core gameplay certainly is not. Overall, I liked it. I didn't finish it, but what I played was really enjoyable. I do wish the game had a save feature though. I'm not sure why it doesn't. If you're going to play it, be ready to finish it in one sitting. Minute is a third-person action game that has you playing as a wind-up toy, making your way up to the top of a tinkerer's workshop to defend an important chest from the invading rafters, who are basically just mechanical bugs. Out of all the games in this video, this one is definitely the most action-heavy one of the bunch. You'll be fighting pretty much from start to finish, as the rafters are virtually everywhere. Battling one of them is simple enough, but sometimes they have friends with them, and then it can become quite challenging. That being said, this isn't just a spam left click and defeat the enemies over and over type situation either. I mean, sure, they are the same enemies over and over again, but there's a couple things that make the combat encounters feel refreshing. The first is the complexity of the combat itself, which is something that surprised me. You have your regular attacks, but you also have heavy attacks, and then you can engage enemies in the air, slashing them from different angles and subsequently slamming the ground beneath you. You can also throw your little wind-up thing, dealing ranged damage, and then calling it back as if it was Mjolnir. Props to the animations here, they're brilliant. Secondly, the environment plays a massive factor as well. The level design is very intricate, with a lot of verticality and different ways of reaching your destination. It can be a pain when you fall off an edge and end up having to repeat some steps, but that's part of the challenge. What it also does is make some combat encounters more tricky, as you have to be aware of how you move in a fight. It isn't just action that makes this game memorable either, there's a whole story to indulge in here. Granted, it is mostly from a world-building perspective, so a lot of it is past tense, but it does paint an interesting world that details a very long, widespread conflict between these wind-up toys and the rafters. It's far from a cheerful world, if the mass amount of dead bodies scattered everywhere wasn't an obvious indication. That being said, I do think some of the audio logs you can find are a bit repetitive. A lot of them pretty much say the same thing. Things are going bad, I'm going to die, Master Thaddeus doesn't seem to be doing well, etc. Like, yeah, we get it. No offense. The game also suffers from glitches and performance issues. Hit registry can be very wonky, resulting in some unfair deaths, and I did have a weird glitch at the end which saw enemies shooting up to the top of the map after being pushed off the edge. Nevertheless, despite this, I was pleasantly surprised by Minute. It looks great, and it plays great. All of its core features have been executed really well, and I had a good time playing it. The Obscura Experiment is a first-person, narrative-driven horror game taking place on a science vessel containing a dirty little secret. You play as Priya Ellis, a scientist stationed on the ship who starts her day performing simple maintenance until finding herself in a life-or-death situation. The game starts with an advertisement of sorts for the company who owns the ship, Anabasis & Co. It talks about their latest expedition and the discoveries that were made, which will significantly improve people's way of life. Then it starts getting creepy and everything cuts to black. And yet, when you're brought into the game, things appear fine. You're tasked with doing maintenance repairs to specific parts of the ship, and although it's quiet, it doesn't seem to be abnormal. Then the lights go out, and things start going wrong very quickly. I should mention that during this time, and throughout the rest of the game, you are in regular contact with the ship's captain, and she helps you navigate the ship while instructing you on what to do. Of course, she's locked in her quarters, so everything that needs to be done has to be done by you, meaning you get to risk your life all the time. Thanks, Captain. Before long, you get to find out what exactly has been going on in the ship, and what is so important about the research being conducted here. Turns out it's this horrifying thing. An alien life form of some kind that has escaped captivity and is wreaking havoc everywhere it goes. Your objective is to neutralize it somehow while also making your escape. Doing this is no easy feat, however, as it staunchly patrols the numerous rooms and corridors of the ship, and if it sees you, it will chase you. It moves faster than you, so your only way of dealing with it is to run and shut all the doors behind you to slow it down. And let me tell you, this is actually quite intense. You can hear it breaking its way through each door you close, meaning you can gauge how far away it is from you just by sound, and that's pretty scary. It's dark, so you have to rely on your tablet's night vision feature to guide your way forward, but it only has a limited charge, so you need to use it wisely. I was quite surprised by just how challenging this could be sometimes. The game is really well thought out, and it doesn't take much for you to really fumble the ball and get yourself trapped. I played it on normal difficulty. I can't imagine what it was like on the hardest. Alas, I left this game with a really positive experience. It does have a somewhat simple approach to pretty much all of its core areas, but what's here is executed to a pretty high degree. Well done to the people involved. You deserve a round of applause. Biome Island, I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a minimalist strategy game that sees you decorating procedurally generated islands by placing, well, biomes. It's a game that focuses on building a relaxing experience with a very simple set of rules. There is a bit of challenge though. It's not an idle game, and what I mean by that is that you need to pay attention to what you're doing. You build up points each time you place a new tile, and how many points you gain is entirely dependent on where you place your tiles. You have 3 biomes to choose from: forest, desert and snow. I do wish there were more, but these 3 are quite distinct, and they each have their own flora to make them stand out. They're not just different colours, they have finer details that make them interesting. Visually as a whole, it is very nice to look at. The sun shining combined with the ocean backdrop do a lot to generate a relaxing atmosphere, which is basically what this game is all about to begin with. The music reinforces this as well, having a tranquil vibe, even if it is the same track on a loop. As I mentioned before, the islands are procedurally generated, so you can get ones in all kinds of shapes and sizes, meaning each playthrough can be different in terms of the final outcome. Nevertheless, the goal is to get points. Each time you pass a certain threshold, you get the opportunity to pick a new environment to place, giving you 2 options. Each environment has 3 packs, as the game calls them, which contain their own set of tiles. Once you've gained enough points, you can generate a new island and start from scratch. That's basically the gist of the game. It kept me going for about 20 minutes. Eventually I found it a bit repetitive and turned it off, but to be honest, I get the impression it's not meant to be played in long intervals. It's more of a time killer, albeit a calming one which has its own appeal. I would be lying if I said it wasn't satisfying to play. You really are painting a blank canvas, and seeing the transformation of it as you continue placing tiles is surprisingly fulfilling. It may be very light on the content, but it's a light-hearted game, and for what it is, I really enjoyed it. Postmouse is a third-person platformer which sees you playing as, well, Postmouse, a postman, except he's a mouse. He's been given a new responsibility, delivering the post. Until now, he worked at the office, but since Carl the Post Pigeon... I'm sorry, I love these names. Since Carl the Post Pigeon hasn't been seen in 3 days, somebody else must deliver the mail instead, and so that is now your job. The game is split into 3 distinct chapters, with each one revolving around a specific character that you must deliver mail to. What I love most about these chapters is that each one has its own set of challenges. It's not just a platformer for platformer's sake. Each part of the game has its own thing going on. For example, the first chapter has you navigating a fast-flowing river, bouncing on rocks and wooden boards, with an emphasis on building paths to your destination. Chapter 2 has the most verticality, having you climb a massive clock tower whilst interacting with the various gears and machinery. Then Chapter 3 throws up the intensity by introducing a chase sequence. The game constantly brings something new to the table, which is good because Postmouse can take about an hour to complete, so if it was just jumping from platform to platform, I doubt I would have finished it. Alas, the game has another thing going for it that also makes it stand out, and that is the world. Let's talk about it from a conceptual standpoint. Your boss is a frog. You're delivering mail to a giant tortoise, a bunch of baby robins, and an angry cat. You meet all kinds of characters along the way, including a mouse dressed as a posh gentleman talking about claiming free real estate. It's whimsical and charming, and it sticks with you. Even if platformers aren't your thing, you're going to remember Pablo the tortoise. It also helps that the game is gorgeous to look at in general. Environments are spectacularly well made, and the way it is incorporated into the level design as a whole is seamless. Performance-wise, I had no noticeable issues whatsoever. My only major issue really is how the game feels to play. While the core mechanics are absolutely fine, the movement is clunky, and it's very hard to ignore. In the first chapter it wasn't too much of an issue for me, but in Chapter 2, when you're climbing the massive clock tower, it was very noticeable. Then Chapter 3 happened, and that chase sequence was far from smooth thanks to the clunkiness of the controls. Regardless of that critique, however, Postmouse is a game that I'll remember fondly. The love and care that went into making it is hard to miss, and for all of it to be free for anyone to play is something worth commending the developers for. And there you have it. That is the end of episode 5. This is the part where I like to say that the next one shouldn't be too long of a wait, and realistically that is true given the list of free-to-play games I have, but I am terrible with sticking to my word. It's best not to say anything except, the next one will be done when it is done, but hopefully soon. Maybe. I hope something there sparked your interest. As far as variety goes, I'd say this one was probably the most varied one I've done so far. I've noticed that I have a tendency to go for 3D action platformers more than anything else, and I am trying to pivot away from that, and will continue to do so in future episodes. If there's any that you would like to see highlighted, then be sure to comment them down below. Likewise, if you're a developer who wishes to have their game highlighted, then do not hesitate to contact me. Even if it isn't free to play, I like to do videos looking at upcoming releases, so be sure to show off what you've done. I'd be more than happy to take a look and talk about it. As I mentioned before, the links to all of these games can be found in the description box below, and you better play them. At least play one of them. I will know if you haven't, and I will find you and hunt you down. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, as that helps me a lot. And if you want to see more like it, then be sure to subscribe. If you like indie games in general, then be sure to subscribe for that as well, as that is basically what this channel is about. Until the next one, I'll see you soon. Bye.